The snap is good, and the handoff goes to the Apple runner. He's breaking away down the sideline. Look at that speed.
I just realized that I didn't have my mic turned on or close enough for you to hear me, so I'm going to start over. So sorry about that. For the folks who just joined, thanks for your patience on this. And if anybody can give me a little heads up, can you hear me now? And also, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get rid of my echo here real quick. Oops, there we go. There. Now should have sound with no echo, and maybe the audio will stay consistent and nice today. So it's like the checklist Scott had every single day, having to go through and go, this is done, that's done, this is done, and I'm doing the same thing. And it's funny because I wanted to just dive into the show today, assuming that all my tech was in place, because I was watching a live stream yesterday by somebody else, and they spent like the first, literally no joke, 10 minutes going, is my chat working? Is this working? Is that working? Is that working? And it's like a comedy of errors of everything that I don't want to do with my stream, but at the same time, you can't help doing, because, you're sitting here juggling 3 to 4 or 5 different things. But I was saying that a couple things. I just got done watching the Scott Adams School and the live stream there, and Brian Romeli was on, who is the person who inspired my original piece there, the Rogue Bee. And, the Rogue Bee is literally the title from one of his articles. Likewise, the Fortress of Consensus, or the Cathedral of Consensus, which was the other topic that I talked about a few days ago, that also was something inspired by Brian. So I was fascinated and super excited to see Brian on the Scott Adams School this morning. And like I was saying, one of the things that's kind of interesting is when you tune into something like that, there's a sense of, at least for me, because I'm just starting out and I'm just getting this thing going, I'm always concerned about trying to make sure that I'm doing a good job, or trying to, put something good out there. But you watch somebody like that. I on Sunday, I watched Owen, or I listened to Owen's show. And now one of the things about Owen's show is, there's no video, it's just audio. And there's a whole bunch of people chiming in, which is a very different kind of show format than what I'm doing here and what Scott does. And so I was trying to contribute on that event, on Owen's stream on Sunday. And every time I opened my mouth, it was just like I was getting feedback. I didn't understand why my mic wasn't working. I was struggling with a couple tech things. And then on top of that, it was like nobody could hear me, probably because the mic wasn't close enough, the volume wasn't up, things like that. And it dawned on me, now looking back, that's why I was struggling with it. But the frustration that it built in me while I was trying to contribute to Owen's show was so, poignant, that when I turned around and tried to do my own show, I felt like it was a total flop. It was a total failure. And it was in part because I came off of listening to everything and everybody putting in their opinions and things like that. And I was like, well, I felt like I didn't have anything to say after all of that, because I was spent. I'd all my energy of trying to put together something was broken and off the rails, because I was taken in so many different directions by listening to other people before I did my show. But that didn't happen today. And I think it's the format. I think it has to do with the fact that, if it's when you're in a self-elected talk show, and by self-elected, I mean people actually just popping up and saying, hey, this is, whoever, and I'm going to talk about blah, blah, blah. And they just immediately go off on a tangent. When you put something together for a show, or what is ideally a show, you're not going to have the distractions of that, right? But I felt like I kind of had this thing in my mind that it would be bad for me to go into a show, into Owen's session prior to doing my show, because I would come away with that scattered feeling. And, especially when you're trying to contribute, you can't, and the frustration of that. And then go into trying to do like what I'm doing right now, doing my own show. So that would have depleted me. But today I listened to Brian's show. Well, I shouldn't say Brian's show. It was the Scott Adams School and Brian's contribution to it. And it didn't scatter my thoughts at all. If anything, it energized me. It brought me even more energy and more excitement to talk today. And that's even though I feel like when I listen to Brian and I listen to Owen, they're so talented. They're so strong in what they do that sometimes I listen to them and I can feel a little bit intimidated and go, am I going to even be able to contribute something at a level that's worth anybody's time? I don't know. So that's where I got into what gave me a sensation of where I wanted to go with things today. And so before I had watched that show, I had a couple things that I was going to try and do, because one of the things I've always admired about Scott is his sense of humor. And the thing that I really like is the idea that there might be something interesting if I were to just take Scott Adams' 6 rules of humor and put that into an algorithm as a search mechanism, and then go out and look at the headlines for things that are coming up, and then attempt to build out some humor from that. So here's one of the things that came out of that. Now, I ended up having to put my own work into this because it didn't work just off the cuff. In other words, the AI, what the AI dumped out was not funny at all. But so there was a couple, three major topics that were coming out that are kind of like headline everything that's going on in the world today. NFL news. Over the weekend, there were a lot of games, and the games, for NFL fans, are totally dominating the news. The second one has to do with this is going to be a huge week for investors, because there's going to be a lot of earnings calls, and there's also going to be a fair amount of folks in crypto going, oh my God, because, clutching the pearls, because they're going to be worried about where do things go with their crypto investments and things like that. So one of the things that came to mind was that it would be kind of funny to, if you've ever played fantasy football, there's a fun thing about fantasy football. You pick your team, they have a draft, and the total pool of players that you can pick from are the total pool of active players in the NFL today. And they have to be active because you're going to watch their plays and decide if those plays are, not decide, you're going to use those plays to plot out a fake game on your own little tabletop, if you will. And that becomes the game. So one year, out of the blue, just for giggles, I was having, I was part of a gaming group, and we played, some collaborative video games together. And the football season started up, and they said, hey, by the way, these guys were hardcore avid gamers. I was kind of a casual gamer that just dropped into the group for a while. But the avid gamers also played fantasy football, and I had never done it. And I said, sure, I'll give this a try. Why not? And I don't, if you've tuned into any of my previous videos, I was talking a little bit about how my wife and I, watching football with my wife is an absolute gas, because she does not know any of the teams, and I'm just barely up on the teams. I'm not really an avid football follower. But, come playoffs, once January hits, I'm all in on watching whatever football game is on, because it's just, that's when the competitiveness really kicks in. You've got plenty of competitiveness earlier in the season, but when the playoffs hit, that's when you are going down to who's going to make the football, or who's going to make the Super Bowl. So 2 stories about the Super Bowl. First, my wife, right? When my wife watches football, she cheers for the play, period. It doesn't matter which side, doesn't matter what team. And so if you're watching football with her in a room with hardcore avid football players, they'll literally be like, "You're bad luck, get out of here," because she will cheer for whichever team or whichever player makes a good play. Now, ultimately, that's kind of the foundation of what is fantasy football, because you pick a set of players, not the teams, and then you create a team, and then your team becomes the players. So that leads into my one time playing fantasy football and said, I didn't know anything about fantasy football. I didn't know how to pick players. I didn't know anything about the players. So I just, I was just like having fun with it. And I said, I'm going to pick all I want on my team are players with a last name where their last name is a color. So white, brown, green, didn't matter. And it was just the reason that popped into my mind is I remembered Mean Joe Green, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pick a bunch of random colors as the team, whatever team. And it took a little bit because we had to find a quarterback that actually had the name that was a color, and it turned out to be a guy named White. So whatever it was, the entire fantasy football team league got so mad at me, they ousted me because they were like, "You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're an idiot," and and I was just like, "Okay, I'm just having fun here, right? This is a game. Come on, guys, So they ousted me and they kicked me out, and I got to still follow because my team was constructed and in the software that allowed us to watch the game. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So as it turned out, I ended up in 4th at first. And then we got to the playoffs. And when we got to the playoffs, my team made it to the Super Bowl in the fantasy football league. It lost only because the quarterback that season ended up with a concussion and was out. So it's like even a random pick will win, right? Totally, absolutely ridiculously random pick could win the Super Bowl technically. So that's why, that's why I kind of said, okay, what is this? What kind of humor can I pull out of some of this? Now, let me tell you the other story real quick. And this is about my last name happens to be the same last name as a very, very famous, actually my whole name, not my last name, my whole name minus the middle initial is the same as a psychology doctor that's out there. And he's passed away, but he had this book that he wrote or a couple of books that he wrote. And it was a very popular thing for a long time. And it's kind of on the spiritual side of the world, not so much on it's not a doctor type of thing. So because of his name and where I lived, which ironically happened to be in the same city he lived in for a period of time when he was publishing these books, and we were in California. I was in California at the time. So we would go to Las Vegas. I had to go to Las Vegas a lot for work. But because of my last name, or my whole name, I started getting perks in Vegas out of the blue. Like I'm getting free, like without any gambling at all. I'm getting suite stays at the Wynn and the Palazzo. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I don't know why that's happening, but I'm getting these packages sent to me. And I'm assuming that it's because that doctor was apparently a big time gambler. Maybe, I don't know. So we get an invitation to go to the Palazzo for a Super Bowl event. And this is for the year that was the Broncos and the Seahawks. And so again, not knowing much of anything about football, we go in and they have this entire section. Usually you'd go here for like a convention, and the convention would take up one of the halls, complete huge area. It's like probably 3 times the size of a football field, easily. And they had a Jumbotron hanging from the ceiling in the middle of this room. And one side of the hall was the Seahawks and the other side was the Broncos. So we sat down on the side of the Broncos. And, my wife and I are sitting there, they had food, you could get drinks and all of this. And so we're eating, having food, and we're sitting around this table, and it's a whole bunch of people from the Broncos, and everybody's just excited and looking forward to it. Not knowing anything, I got up with all of the other folks that were actually placing bets, and we went over and placed a bunch of bets. And I put in like maybe $50 or something like that. And we're betting on a spread. I don't even know how to bet a spread at this point. So we're all betting, and these people dumped thousands of dollars on the spread. So fine, we go back to the table, and the very first play for the Seahawks was they got a safety in the Broncos end zone. That safety completely destroyed all of the bets that these people had placed for thousands of dollars. The entire table went from happy-go-lucky and everybody was excited to everybody was dour and like mad. And my wife and I just we were like, okay, what happened? And we got up and we left and we went to the other side and sat down at a Seahawks table and continued our event for, maybe another half an hour. And then we left because it was just everybody was so intense. But it was just the funniest thing, right? So anyways, these weird events in your life sometimes happen. But apparently over the weekend, there was a guy, Brandon Cooks, who, for the Broncos, the Bills, who caught a ball, and they were saying that it wasn't a catch. He says it was a catch, whatever. Who knows? But there was something that I felt like I had in common with Cooks. I cook. I'm in a kitchen all the time, and I think there's finally a player in the NFL who understands what it's like for me cooking in the kitchen, because something always gets burned, right? And his catch was declared, it was ruled as a non-catch. So now here's the other one. This week, because of all of the drops on the earnings, the investors and football fans are going to have a lot in common. Because right now, 90% of fans are analyzing all the plays. 10% of them are praying that their quarterbacks don't get concussed in this next week. Tech investors right now, 90% of them are all looking at their 401ks and praying, and 10% of them are praying that Elon doesn't say something bad at the earnings call or something crazy at the earnings call that makes their rating, their stocks drop like crazy. And then crypto fans are going to have something like, the same kind of feeling that fans of the Bills are going to have, because the Bills fans are all like, this is our year. It's going to be great. And it's just like a bunch of people buying crypto and trying to buy the dip and is saying, this is going to be our big opportunity. Maybe, unless that call happens, And then here's another one that came out, which was kind of interesting. Microsoft earnings are out. And they made $100 billion, but users still hate Clippy the Ghost in Copilot. And in order to celebrate, they'll have layoffs coming in the next couple of weeks, no doubt. And then Meta earnings, Zuckerberg stares into the camera and says, AI will fix everything, right? In the meantime, there are more incredible cat videos that are AI generated than ever before. The internet's being completely overwhelmed with AI cat videos. So those were some of the humorous things that I tried to use the Scott Adams filter to kind of see what it could do, in terms of finding humorous headlines that might be out there in the world today, and use that to come up with some kind of jokes or content that I might be able to use in today's show. So I don't know if any of those jokes hit for any of you, maybe not. But it was kind of fun putting it together, because looking at the news now, I did have to tweak a little bit. I hope I delivered them okay, because I'm not a stand-up comedian at this point, but I'm working on, like I said, improving my show because at some point I'd like this to be something people actually enjoy to tune into, not just me talking at the camera. And but that said, like I told you at the beginning, I'm probably going to have to keep this short because I have some other things that are popping right now that I have to deal with on something that I do on a consulting basis. A lot of what I do is focus on AI and teach AI to a degree and train AI. So these are things that I've been doing for the past 3 years. Learning how to prompt better, learning how to become a better user of AI, incorporating AI into my world. And what's interesting is since the beginning of this show that I started doing this, I've incorporated AI into my personal workflows so much more than I ever thought that I would, that I'm feeling as though I can actually really provide some advice for, people at home. When I say people at home, anybody listening, on better ways to actually use it in the real world. I mean, I'm getting in my car now. I have a Tesla, and it's an older one. I bought a secondhand one and by the way, pay attention to this one. Get a Tesla. Get a secondhand Tesla, maybe 2 or 3 years old. They work just as great. The engine, the motors are superb. The batteries are going to last a super long time, regardless of what everybody says. I'm still at like 98% of capacity on a car that's 3 years old. And the way they'd say that it degrades maybe 5% to 10% in the first couple of years, and then after that, it's just like flat and steady for a very long period of time. And then towards the very end of the battery life, it drops off real fast. So these batteries are rated for like 400,000 miles, and the motors are rated for like 1 million miles. So it's insane not to buy a Tesla, and they're the safest car on the road. Sorry to do a Tesla commercial. I'm not a Tesla employee, but I am a fan, and I'm an owner. So when I think about the use of AI, I'm addicted now because I go into my car and the Grok AI is part of the control system of the car now. So I go in and I just talk to it and I say, I want to go out to dinner. What restaurants are open right now? And it'll talk back to me and say, this is what's open. And I want to get Thai food, and it'll, I'll say which one is best rated, and it'll tell me, and then I'll just say, take me there. And it'll actually plot it out, map it, and I can put on the self-driving, and it'll take me there. And it's pretty astounding, honestly, at how well it works. And I found that that's becoming intrinsic. The full self-driving is like $100 a month if you add it, if you buy the car and then you just use it. The fact that it's now one of the big things that happened over the past few weeks was Lemonade, which is a brand new AI-focused company that does insurance, car insurance. They decided to integrate with Tesla. So now when Lemonade is available, when that insurance company is available in your state, if you use Tesla full self-driving, it monitors you in real time. And if you just use the self-driving and put it in self-driving mode, sit back, don't touch the wheel, you only get charged insurance based on your usage, and it monitors the usage. So as much as the monitoring might be Big Brother and oh my God, whatever, on the other hand, I pay $1,200 a year for a car that sits in a garage half the time, right? I'm not even driving it, but I have to pay for insurance all the time. But if I had Lemonade combined with full self-driving, $100 plus maybe another $100 or even less, I don't know what the real rate's going to be, but smaller than that, I could pay a fraction because I'm only going to pay for the amount of time that I was off of full self-driving and actually, driving normally without it. Which, if you have full self-driving, trust me, you're not going to, because it's so addictive just to sit back, hit it. I mean, here's my experience getting in a car. I get in the car. I ask the car to take me where I want to go. I hit the full self-driving. Then I pull up my phone and I start watching Scott Adams. Literally. I mean, that has been my day up to this point until Scott passed. Now I tend to watch, if I did a show, I might watch my own show just to hear if I did good or bad or whatever. But on the other hand, what I really do is I go out and I listen to the Moonshots podcast, because I really like to hear what's going on in tech news and things like that. And I also will occasionally drop in on the All In podcast. I don't like the All In podcast as much because it feels a little too. The folks over there are high on the fact that they're billionaires, right? They come across that way. I don't know. I know that there's some humility over there, but honestly, it comes across as like an over the top Hollywood show with the Kardashians, and I can't get interested in it. It actually drives me nuts sometimes. But you go over to Moonshots, and it's purely about intellectual property and people talking about AI tech. And since I'm in the AI field, only at the very edges of it. I don't write programs or anything, not yet. But I'm extremely interested in that. I'm also interested in 3D printing and robotics, so I will listen to some stuff in those areas as well. So to have all of that stuff coming together, and just be able to hop in the car, say, take me to wherever I'm going, and then bring the show up and listen to it the whole time with my hands back, not having to drive and being able to just enjoy the show. I drove across the state of Florida about maybe a month, back in September, doing this. I put it on full self-driving. I put on Scott Adams, and then I ended up watching Moonshots afterwards. I didn't touch the wheel the whole time. I just sat back and listened to the show, and I was entertained the whole time. It felt like nothing because I was actually just enjoying a show and listening. It was great, and that's where I think things are going to go in a real near future, because the capabilities of these robots on wheels are astounding, and it gives you the free time, because that's the other thing. When you have something like Grok in the car, you can talk to it. You can just have a conversation, and it transcribes your conversation so that you can go back and look at it later. Yesterday's episode, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about, I was talking about things that I actually had a conversation with Grok about earlier. The night before, I was like, what should I talk about? And I just kept going back and forth with the AI. And, it didn't come together quite as well as I wanted it to, because I didn't have, I needed to extract the information out of that conversation and then bring it to a couple key bullets as a head. Today, things did work out pretty well, because I focused more on knowing I had a couple of intentions today. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I wanted to see if I could inject any humor into it, which I tried to do in my, quick 5 jokes there. I also wanted to bring some feedback around the stuff that I really like to talk about, which is AI. And I also wanted to, kind of bounce off of and reflect where things went with having watched the Scott Adams School this morning with Brian Romeli, who, again, as I said, inspired a lot of my other conversations, and Owen also, who inspires a lot of my conversations. So having all of that stuff kind of all come together and being able to share that with you, and I feel like today I was a little bit more on point and energized and focused on those things that I wanted to talk about. And also, by coming off of such an inspiring show, every time I read anything Brian puts out, Brian Romeli, and then hear him for the first time today talking, definitely energized me and gave me an incentive to really kind of push forward. So I'm, like I told you, I do have to kind of wrap it up a bit early today, because I've got some work to do on another project. But Great seeing you. It's nice to see even more people join today than yesterday and the day before. So thank you for that. And for those of you, if you have any quick questions in the chat, I got maybe 5 more minutes if you want to do it. Okay, Mr. B's movies. Let me pull this in the center where I'm not, where I can see it better. There we go. Okay. How do I feel about Optimus and in general AI being inside a humanoid robot? All right. So I do have a perspective on this. And that is when I think about Optimus, first thing I think about is what would Optimus be doing in my house? Now, in a perfect world, the one thing I don't do in my life, I don't walk around with a bunch of, you see these people walk around with notepads all the time. And those are like the best prolific writers in the world. I am an aspiring writer, but I don't have something with me all the time. I don't have a pen or a pencil all the time. For the longest time, I have been trying to figure out how to make my phone be the ultimate dictation device so that I could actually just go over here and work on it. So one of the things I did discover is you can do a double tap on the back of your phone, and I turned it off because it started recording everything. But there's a double tap feature on your phone where if you do a double tap, it'll instantly open the voice recorder. So that's great. If I have my phone, if I think about the double tap, great. But if I actually had a companion who was just kind of like hanging out, just like C-3PO as Elon says, just literally following me around, I could say, hey, go vacuum for me, right? And it could go do that, right? That's great. But just having the robot follow me around so that I had a momentary thought, I could say, hey, take this down and put it into a note for me so that I could talk about it later or record it later. That would be huge. I would love that. And I've kind of almost got that right now with my car. Because I don't know about you, but the places that inspire me most, the places where I get something popping into my head that I want to talk about or I want to write about, it's in the shower, which is really, I'm not going to have a robot in the shower with me, especially if it's got cameras, right? I'm not that modest, but at the same time, I don't think that I need to be the champion star of the show for the nudist camps out there, right? So even though I will tell you, I will often bring my phone into the shower and I'll put it so that it's pointing at the walls so that it can't see me, right? So that I can listen to a show or so I can talk to my recording thing, right? So that's true and that's real. But, maybe if I brought the robot in and said, okay, turn around, don't look at me or don't watch me while I'm nude, but at the same time, let's keep talking. Let's keep this conversation going. So I would probably have a robot in my house comfortably, if nothing else, just as something to bounce my ideas off of. Because when I get done here, and when I'm not working on my project, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to go talk to my wife. And then she's doing something else. Might interrupt one of the things she's doing. And if she'll be typing away and doing her thing. And then I come in and I just sit down next to her and I start talking and she's like, because she has to stop whatever she was working on to listen to me because I'm like bubbling over like, oh, you got this thing. And she's like, no. Leave me alone. I'm trying to do my own thing. But on the other hand, I need to talk about that stuff. I need to share it with somebody. That's one of the reasons why I'm even doing this show is because when something hits me and it's exciting, I really want to talk about it and share it. So having a robot companion that I could actually bounce things off of once in a while, that would be fantastic. Now, I need to, when you talk to Grok, one of the problems with it is that the second you say something, it immediately it literally tries to jump on the tail of whatever you said and start talking. Like it's going to summarize whatever you just said, or it's going to bounce off of it or go give you a search or give you results. And there's a problem with that because it interrupts the train of thought and you can't continue. Like right now, I can continue with this train of thought, answering your question in the chat, and I'm uninterrupted and nobody's stopping me. So when you have that companion next to you able to just listen and not talk, that'll be great. if you think about C-3PO from Star Wars, it's I swear to God, it was prescient in a sense, because it was actually just like what it's like to talk to Grok. Because when C3, you're well, the odds of that happening are blah, 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 blah. And you're like, never quote odds to me when I'm taking a chance, right? You would have the same exact reaction. And that's exactly what it's like when I'm talking to Grok. It's like, will you shut up while I'm trying to talk? Any other questions or thoughts that those of you in the chat have before I wrap it up? Because I want to probably drop off here in a few minutes, but I'll give you another second or two if you have any questions. And if you don't, that's okay, because I know one of the things that I've found for all the years of watching Scott, and also what I discovered on Sunday when I was listening to Owen's event, was that when you're in that, when you're listening to a show, it blots out your ability to come up with a creative thought. So I could never, the only time something happens in a show, I'll hear something in somebody else's show, and for like 2 seconds, I can know that something triggered a thought in my head, and it popped something that made me want to keep track of it. And if I'm lucky, I can pause it and go right into it. But if I am not lucky, I can't. I goof. It just messes things up. And then I lose the train of thought altogether. So, it's very difficult to listen to a show and come up with an original thought, or come up with something that's useful and significant at the time. So, but I'm definitely hitting my hard stop now, so I'm going to have to drop off. I really thank you for tuning in, those of you who did, and I hope this one was fun and interesting for you. I will be back tomorrow. I'll be back every day. If they're going to continue bringing guests onto the Scott Adams School like they did today, I will be watching that show before doing this show every day. But on days that, maybe the topics aren't quite gelling for me, I might drop off and start this show a little bit earlier. But every single day I will continue, just like I said I would, and just like Scott did, trying to put something out there every single day. And I look forward to interacting with you more and more as these videos pick up over time. I know if I just keep doing this consistently, there will be some people that this will resonate with, and perhaps we'll have a better show. I will say, after a show is done, one of the things that you might think about is, whenever you watch something and consume a show like this, when the show is done, turn everything off for 10 minutes. Just turn off the TV, turn off your email, turn off your chat. Think about the show and what it did for you, if it did anything. Was it worth your time? If it's not worth your time, maybe you don't waste your time tomorrow, right? And if I lose listeners over a statement like that, I guess that's logical and fair. But if it does inspire something, jot it down so that tomorrow you can ask me, right? And that's what I would hope for those of you who are watching or see this would do, because that gives us some way of communicating and interacting. Because I know when I'm listening to a show, I can't come up with that original thought during the show. So I would hope that, by taking that moment of silence after the show, you can also do the same thing. And I did exactly that right after the Scott Adams show. The Scott Adams School show where Brian was talking. I listened and listened and listened, and then I turned it off. And then I just sat there for a minute and I thought about things before I started my show. And I really didn't think I was going to, I was afraid that I was going to have the same problem today as I had on Sunday, where I just couldn't put my thoughts together. And it didn't happen that way today. So that was great. And I think it's because I gave that minute or two of pause before I just dove into this show. So that said, I'm going to wrap up. Since this is the second sip, I'm going to give you my sip, which is cheers to you and cheers to all of the great content that Scott Adams has given us over the years. And may you all have a great day. I will talk to you again tomorrow.
The snap is good, and the handoff goes to the Apple runner. He's breaking away down the sideline. Look at that speed.